Okay, can you hear us?
Not through the Zoom yet. You have to make me a panelist or something.
Okay, hold on one second. More.
Hey, Lisa.
Hi, Roger. Good morning.
No, good morning. Panelist is just for the panel decides what people should be able to hear.
Right, you should be able to hear me.
Change the setting on your far left side.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
To,
Where it says, on the far left side, it's gonna be maybe video, audio, and choose the owl.
oh, right here.
I get it, where you see the, probably with the next one over. Oh, okay.
It's on owl.
We go to the.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Microphone. Default. I don't see the owl. Do you see it? Am I missing
No, it may be one of the, Lisa, it, when we go to the, microphone icon where you mute and so forth,
What do you see?
we don't have an option for the owl microphone. We've got the mini cam, we've got microphone mini cam, and we got echo canceling speaker phone.
it? What about this thing right here, Roger?
On the video, yeah, we found the out. Good morning.
Hi, how you
Good
doing?
morning,
How are you?
Connie. What about this, Roger?
Let's see, wireless microphone control. So yeah, push the red button so it's not muted.
Hold on. I hear you.
You hear us?
Guys, I hear you guys. It's working.
Okay, good. We just pressed the wireless microphone
She may have
control.
heard it, mute it again and see.
Okay, let me mute it again. One moment.
Do you still hear us?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not that.
It's not that. Okay, there was another thing.
Well, it's working though, right?
Yes.
You can hear us? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Morning.
I like
Thanks.
his little nameplates, Deborah.
Thank you.
Fancy.
We have a new gavel.
Should the gavel be?
Wow.
not taking over, stepping in for today. For Connie, she's had a big move, so happy to do it. Everybody has a good weekend?
Yes.
Excellent. Yes.
Good. Okay, so starting off, public comments. Does anybody have any about specific agenda items? We'll have a general open public comments at the end. Okie dokie. Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes? And is there a motion?
Move approval.
Is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion? Okay. Why can't I hear this? Okay, all in favor for passing the board minutes?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, passes, minutes approved. New business, Roger.
Yeah, actually Ken is gonna do the first one.
Ken,
Good morning.
good morning.
Good morning.
We're gonna present in the STEM Hub action item. Good morning to our audience. Mr. Leon, good to see you, sir. Right, obviously, right on time. So we're asking the board to approve funding for the 100 Black Men of Jacksonville Incorporated, as well as Honor Star Foundation, to implement the STEM Hub program. This program is for underrepresented youth, and this is gonna be in the amount of $200,000 each, so to speak, per agency. Also authorizing the CEO to execute a contract with both providers. I want to point out the period here, June 1st through May 31st, that was a typo, that was an error. It should actually be August 1 through May 31st. We'll make those changes and make sure we get that on the actual consent agenda. So I didn't want to highlight that. That period should be August 1 through May 31st. All right. As well as to renew the contract for additional one-year terms and take all necessary actions to accomplish the actions approved on one. So a brief narrative on the action item. This is for services in the STEM field area. Both providers were successful. We felt they've done a good product for the last 3 years under this, under those services. And we're gonna be submitting this as an exemption due to the fact that legislation was filed through city council for them to have a 3-year lease of the facility in the building. And I put the actual language for the exemption in the procurement code that gives us that authority. And I'll take any questions at this time.
Quick question, are all their activities in that building on Moncrief or they go off-site?
They go off-site, I believe. I believe Honor Star also goes to another facility, because that building is kind of small.
It is small.
Yeah.
I know 100 Black Men, they also do some Zoom, some virtual, and they also go there on Saturdays, because it gets pretty tight when they're all there together.
It's not the single site for either organization,
Right.
it's just one of the locations that they work out of.
Okay.
Any other questions? Is there a motion? Second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I guess, do you even have to say any opposed if there's 2 ayes?
No.
Okay, motion passes. All right, who's up next?
All right, good morning. We're asking the board to approve the application for funding of the home roof rehabilitation grant. This is a pass-through grant in partnership with the City of Jacksonville's Neighborhoods Division. If awarded, it will provide funding for home roof repairs for 15 families under the city's home roof rehabilitation initiative. You may have seen in the news recently that public demand for this assistance was so high that the original funding was exhausted almost immediately. A cap was put on the waiting list at 125 applicants. And due to the collaboration between KHA and the Neighborhoods Division, these funds will be provided to 15 families identified to have at-risk children. That comes to just over $16,600 per household. Monitoring and reports will be compiled by the Neighborhoods Division and provided to KHA as part of the agreement. The grant award is $250,000 with no required cash match. And I'd be glad to take any questions.
And I just want to add that the reason that we apply rather than them is because if they would have applied directly, they could not put the qualification prioritization on it. But because we applied, we can do that, and that way they can take the families to the top of the list.
Great. Any questions?
Selection process for those 15.
Great question.
It'll still be similar to what they do. They have a waiting list, and basically it's like a first come, first serve. But what they'll do is they'll be able to kind of like, it'll still go to the waiting list, but it will skip down to those who have families. So rather than just, 2 individuals, they have to have kids. So that's the way it'll go.
School age kids.
Yes.
Anything else? Okay, is there a motion? A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. It passes. Okay, Sarah, Lynn, are you up?
One more for Roger.
Oh, one more, okay.
So-
Here you
So for this one, we're asking the board to approve the application for funding of the Criminal Justice Reinvestment Grant through the Department of Children and Families. This would be the fourth in a series of 3-year grants. We've done 9 so far, 9 years, in collaboration with Partnership for Children, for Child Health, and for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. The funding will expand and enhance evidence-based assessments and trauma-informed care through wraparound intervention strategies or WINS. The intent is to prevent delinquency, reduce juvenile justice crime and recidivism, while improving the lives of justice-involved at-risk children, youth, and their families through intervention services. By improving the accessibility and effectiveness of treatment services for juveniles who have a mental illness and/or substance use disorder, and who are in or at risk of entering the juvenile justice system, outcomes should also increase public safety and control spending increases in the juvenile justice system. At-risk juveniles are identified as those with various factors to include individual, family, peer, group, school-related, or community environmental factors. Assessments are done at the JAC, the Jacksonville Assessment Center. The grant award is for $1.2 million over 3 years. Local matching funds are required. KHA will provide a cash match up to $85,000 per year for 3 years, a total of $255,000. And JSO will provide an in-kind match of $1.2 million for detention, security, and space. And I'd be happy to take any questions on this.
Who do they outsource the trauma-informed care to? From, like, what provider?
Several providers. So one of them is Center for Children's Rights, which is also co-located here. They do what they call healing circles.
Okay.
And then we have Hope, we used to call Hope Street, now it's called Hope and Healing Jacks. And they provide the training to their facilitators. And then they also use, I think it's called BAYS, which does the assessments. Yeah.
What's the age range of the kids?
It's mostly teenagers, so there could be as low as 12, but really more like 13 to 18.
Do you guys have any questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Motion? Okay, job, everybody.
I'll cover the next one, yeah. So the next one's probably the more complicated grant that we're applying for. And it's through the U.S. Department of Treasury. So we're pretty excited and really hope we get this one. This is called a pay-for-performance model, which has been done in other states and cities. And essentially, you work with a third-party agency. In this case, it's called Institute for Child Success. And that's the one that's worked with a lot of other states on children's issues. And basically, they work with you to find an investment capital firm. They already have one called Make Home Capital that works with them. And if we get the grant, what'll happen is they'll come here, do a landscape analysis of what we're doing, and what we want to work on is literacy. So basically our goal, our performance would be improving our literacy, third grade reading rates. So they'll come here and see what we're already doing and see what we need to do and then determine, okay, X, Y, Z would probably need to be done to accomplish this, which will cost, and I'm just hypothetically making this up, but let's just say they say $25 million. So we don't know what they'll say. So the investment firm would then give us $25 million. We implement everything. If in fact it works, which I think they'll pretty much make sure it works because they want to get their money back, then the city, along with partners, that would be all city money, basically pays back the investment firm. Well, the great thing about this grant is that once we do all of that, the federal government will pay back $10 million of the grant. And it could be that the whole thing is only $10 million. We don't know yet, but probably the size of our city, it will be more. So this will be kind of a trigger to let us to do a lot more things after this. And I've spoken with the mayor's office about it. They're really excited too. So we do hope we get it. And if we do, it'll be, I think, a really big win for us. And like as an example, I think it was Spartanburg, they did one. They had 30 partners come together that paid back the grant. So it won't just have to be city. We'll try to get a lot of other partners on board to contribute back.
That's the one you were telling me that one.
Yes.
I guess I have questions on, so if it does work, like how are you guaranteeing that you'll get the money back to them?
I mean, all the partners will have to sign something saying that they guarantee certain amounts.
Okay, so you'll do that before.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be like our very first step is to get all the partners on board. There'll be probably like a 6-month just coalition building as well as the landscape analysis. I think we're really getting into here. And even if we don't get this grant, it's something that the mayor's office is interested in doing anyway, because you don't have to have this grant to do this model. But the grant was just due next month, so it kind of kicked us into higher gear to get it done now. But if we don't get the grant, we're gonna start looking to see how we can do it anyways, get these partners together.
Okay, can you give an example of some of the partners?
Yeah, United Way, the Community Foundation, and the city I was talking about, what the partners did was they put all their money into a fund, their community foundation over time. And in that way, that built interest anyway, helping them to gain more money. DuPont is already on board. Actually, Mike Weinstein has been working with them quite a bit. They're already willing to say that they put money in. Any other foundations, Florida Blue, those types of folks too.
Okay, great.
In terms of students, public, private, charter,
It would really be any student not reading on grade level. Basically, the goal is to increase that score, which right now is, I think, 52% of overall reading on grade level. So to bring that entire score up to what would be reasonable for a 2 to 3 year project. So it won't be like 100%. Probably they could say, we could bring it up to 70% or something in 2 years. So they would target all kids that would be counted in that, which actually, to be honest with you, would not be private. And not that I want to leave them out, but their scores just aren't counted and the thing that we'd be working towards. So.
and I would assume, which is a bad word, that there will be some continuity in terms of what this looks like from building A to building B.
Yes, definitely. And part of it is too, we're already doing a lot, so it won't have to really start, from nothing. In fact, I think if my guess of what would probably happen is a lot of what we're already doing that we're seeing get good results would just be replicated. Because what we're doing, like for example, on the 8 REJAC schools, it's just very expensive. That's why we're only in 8 schools. So could we take that model and try to put it in a lot more schools? There's like 100 elementary schools, I think. So.
One of the things, and this is a commentary one.
Yes, definitely.
And I've been a part of these kinds of initiatives where we've utilized recently retired teachers,
Yeah.
particularly those who have worked in Title 1 type situations, or challenge type situations. Folks who still have the expertise, they still have the interest. We've had quite a number of those teachers that I'm talking about right now who left, not because they really wanted to leave, they got so sick and tired of it.
Right, yeah.
Burned out, maybe.
Pretty much, yeah, because of all the other stuff, and I could use another word for stuff, but I'm not gonna do that. Yeah. So I would hope that, as this moves forward and goes into, actual application, that is a very, very useful resource
Yes.
that I think oftentimes we tend to overlook. And I see this as an opportunity to re-engage some of those folks for two reasons. Obviously, they have the expertise, but also for them to sort of get back into the game.
Right,
But sometimes when you leave under certain kind of circumstances, you just say, hey, with it.
right.
And you think about the kind of talent, the kind of expertise that is there.
Exactly.
A little bit of training, but when I think in terms of what's needed with students that we're describing, it's individuals who have a caring attitude.
Yes,
It's not just about numbers.
right.
And you need individuals who are able to build and sustain relationships as you're doing what needs to be done academically. So that would be the angle that I would certainly want to ensure that we're taking that into consideration.
Excellent point. And I'll add, actually, in the past with our after-school programs, well, we've always required them to have a certified teacher on staff.
Yeah.
And Leon or Ken can speak to this more, but with our last RFP, that was one of the things that our providers asked for. Could we use retired teachers? Because in the past, we required that it had to be an active teacher. So we did change our rules internally that it could be a retired teacher, and I think quite a few of the providers utilize those, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yes, that has been a really great resource for us.
So I'm not a member of the governance committee, so I've been quiet. But Madam Chair, Vice Chair, I'd love to add some commentary too. And Lawrence, I was looking at you as you were talking, like clinging on every word. You, of course, have been on the front lines of this. You know, one of the things that I think the school district has taught me is that all help is not helpful.
Right.
And as we look at opportunities to be able to support the district, I want to ensure that, to LD's question, you know, is this public, is this private, is this target? Like, that we go deeper in understanding who are we talking about? Because when you look at some of these objectives of this separate program, they're talking about redirecting funds away from programs that are ineffective. Where and how that shows up, saying, okay, you know, X program in the Duval County Public Schools, we need to redirect those dollars from here or there. And then the second point is, you know, when we talk about outcomes-based measurements, the school district and the school board are responsible for the oversight of improvement. So sharing that data in terms of numbers of students that are on grade level, having some level of understanding that the school district is willing, or I shouldn't even use the word willing, but is permitted to provide that level of information, and to whom is this information being provided. So I think it's, you know, anytime it's a federal grant, there are lots and lots of dollars. But I think there should be lots and lots of conversations before, you know, this kind of thing comes into play. And those conversations should no doubt be led with those who are, you know, responsible for governing the schools.
Yes, they are very involved. And to your point, we have 27 public schools that have more than 75% of kids not reading on the grade level. So those would be worth the first tier that we would try to target with them.
Yeah, I mean, and we don't want to spend all morning talking about it, but we can certainly say some of the highest performing schools, and this is statistically, some of the highest performing schools have the largest number of students who aren't reading on grade level, because they're hidden. You know, when you look at Hendricks Avenue Elementary, and I'm just using that as an example, a school that's an A school, so you don't have those resources like the ones that we're talking about here that are comprehensive, because overall, the population's high achieving. But what about that lonely kid who does not have the resources. So I think, grant programs like this, I think, can help shine a spotlight on them as well.
Most definitely.
Yeah, good point. Well said.
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you've got an A school, then that kid that is not reading on grade level, you're not getting all those infusion of services and programs that are wrapped around an entire district. And that's the loneliest kid in our district and one that needs the most help.
Just give you an example, when you think in terms of that whole accountability system, and I'm going back to FCAT.
That's a bad word. Sure.
Shut him out.
But you had to take a look at your bottom quartile.
Yeah.
Okay. So for a high performing school, even though level 3 is considered provision, part of your bottom quartile is going to be like 3s because you're loaded with these kids, which means that, to Marcia's point, in that pile is that sub pile
Right.
that oftentimes you don't see because of all the other stuff and because of the 8th grade. But it exists. And again, thinking in terms of what something like this has the capacity to do, I would want to be sure, knowing what I know, that we are laser focused so that we don't allow that situation to go without providing needs and those services. But again, I'm very, very strong in terms of not only the academic portion of it, but also the relationship portion of it. Because when you deal with kids who have low performance, you also deal with competing priorities. Because these are the kids who oftentimes are missing out on some of the cool stuff in school. And you think in terms of after school type things, you don't have a captive audience.
Right.
And if I'm a Pop Warner, and I'm pretty good at it, I don't want to do this kind of stuff. I want to do the stuff that I'm good at. Because that makes me feel good.
Right.
So in my mind, all that kind of stuff has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah.
It's not just a numbers piece.
Agreed. Thank you.
Well, how long is this process? Of them coming in and doing evaluation?
I don't know an exact number, to be honest with you, but I think it'll be about 6 months, but I don't want to quote you on that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. I've been forgetting public comment, sorry.
You did take it at the beginning for all the items.
For all the items,
So
so
you're
you don't
fine.
have to
It's
say it
just
this
the way you
way.
phrased it, you're good.
Okay. Is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. That's an exciting one.
So the next one, and this is a good one to your point, Marcia. So we've been working with the district and with the Early Learning Coalition to, part of the funding that we got from the Mayor's Office in December was for a literacy training and coaching model. And we've worked with Bailey Paula Renfro, who is their chief academic officer rather. And what we're looking to do is create a summer training institute that'll be led by UF, University of Florida Lastinger Center. And then after that, have coaches that come into their classrooms throughout the year, and that'll be led by UNF, but they'll be trained by UF. And the reason that we chose that is because currently that's what the district is doing. So they want to build on what they're already doing. They don't want to have a different curriculum or a different type of training. And so UFly is what the curriculum that's called. So we'll build upon that. They'll have a week-long summer institute. And then after that, they wanted someone local with the coaches. So they'll still work with UNF and UNF together. Those coaches can go in. And then with the ELC, it'll be something a little bit different. They're doing something called the LENA model, which will basically also be coaches. We already have those coaches through another contract, but they'll get special literacy instruction from LENA. And it's a pretty neat little concept. They measure how many words the teachers say to the child. So we're partnering with them on that. So between these, it says, it should actually on the front page, but it's UNF, UF, and ELC. Those three partners will help to support the early learning as well as the K through 2. This is what we're gonna focus on for the coaching, and this will just be for the next year, and then it'll be kind of a pilot to see how we wanna do after that.
Any questions?
I have a question, Leah.
Yes,
Is this going, why isn't the school district applying for a grant like this? KHA is applying for a grant like this?
It's not a grant, this is our funding,
This is our fund.
right, that we got from the mayor's office in
And
December.
that's the one that, because I did want to ask, it says this is part of the mayor's initiative and funding was provided through the recently awarded extra dollars. So this was part of the effort that they asked for.
Right.
Okay. So we'll be confirmed.
Perfect.
Quick question on the actual training aspect of it and the way the modules are set up. Will principals / teachers have input in terms of what this looks like?
I honestly don't know the answer to that detail, but I know that UF has already been working with the district, so we're gonna really kind of let the district honestly drive this, although we're paying for it. So I'm assuming that Paula and her team will collect feedback. And then our hope is that they can provide the teachers with some sort of stipend for them to come. We really want to promote it to all K-2 teachers, or really pre-K to 2. So how they do that's gonna be a little bit up to them, but we can encourage that.
I would go beyond encouraging it.
Yes,
And that's the reason I'm saying that.
yes, yes.
It's nothing against Paul. I know Paul, I know a lot of folks up there. Here's what can happen.
Mhm.
As a teacher, it's perceived that they're telling me
Right, right.
what to do, as opposed to giving me the respect
Mhm.
that these years that I've done, at least asking me for my input.
Right,
And I'm very strong in the fact that that needs to be a part of it. Because if not, chances are some folks are gonna take it the other way.
right. And they're less likely to have buy-in and participate, so it's sure something to put there. So I totally agree. Okay, we can do that for sure. Thank you.
Is that something you would put in a motion, or can you just take care of it on your end?
Yeah, we'll take care of it. I'm gonna make sure that when we do the contract, we'll have an MOU with the district as well, and we can put that in there.
That works. Any other questions? Now we need a motion.
So move.
Connie, you seconded it. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Sorry. Do you mind just explaining the recapture process? Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
The next one. And then I can explain what our plan is.
Hi.
Morning.
Morning.
So as you know, the funds for Kids Hope Alliance is funded by the general fund of the city. So it's the taxes, sales taxes and all of that funds Kids Hope Alliance. So what the city does is it says, we're gonna give you, I'm just making up numbers, $60 million to fund all your programs. And at the end of the year, if you've only spent 55 million, then what we're gonna do is take that money back to the general fund because it wasn't your money. So it wasn't like solid waste, which has solid waste fees. And so you take that 5 million and it goes back to the general fund and it has to be reappropriated. And this year, last year, the previous years, there were a couple $1 million, up to like $3 million that I know of, that what happens is we call it recapture. It went back to the general fund as of October 1st, technically, even though that calculation isn't done until March of the following year. And then we go back to city council requesting the dollars to come back. And so last year we didn't have any, which is good because that meant Kids Hope Alliance spent all the money. And so, but when we do have some, so this past year, and I will put in this point, not necessarily the minutes, but the city went through a new financial conversion about 2 years ago. Since that time, the numbers have jumped around. And depending on which numbers you're looking at, the official general ledger or the budget to actual, the numbers are different at the end of the year because that's how the system works. So for us to gauge, we go down, so Jessica Pitts, who's the director of finance, figures out and encumbers as much money as she can at the end of the year. So to try and spend it all and get it captured, so we wouldn't have recapture. So this year, there's a couple things at play. One is, and we're in this recapture amount, and I think Sarah Lynn's gonna discuss it, we have been told, working with the council auditors, what that number is. The number we got back from accounting is about $2 million difference. And the reason is because of how much encumbrances got rolled over. So when you have a contract and you set aside those dollars for it, when you go into the next fiscal year, those dollars actually roll over. And so we rolled over $11.9 million, and we can see it in the system. The accounting came back and said it was only 9, which would mean that we had $2 million more left on the table. And I'm telling more than probably Sarah Lynn wanted me to do. But there's a reason, is because if we come back to you next meeting, because they made more adjustments or whatever, our number is somewhere between 1.4 million and 3 million. I think it's 1.4. That's what council auditors thinks it is, and that's why that's what's getting presented to you. But the numbers are changing. I can tell you, when we created the financial reports, $1 million. Jessica had 16 million. The next day, when I was working with something else, it went down to 15. So adjustments are always being made in the system, and they're finally getting a little more clarity and a little more official, but we still are having some issues with the financial system and consistency. So I'm just letting you know that, because some numbers that you see maybe for Wednesday may be a little different. But the recapture is, and then we go back to city council and recapture those dollars.
And the reason we had a little bit more this year too is we put out almost all of our funding to RFPs this past summer. And so some of the contracts were a little bit later than they normally would have been with normal renewals and getting signed. So that's why some of the money kind of got a little bit lapsed. We've done several things, like Shari was talking about, to put into place to try to eliminate recapture in the future. One of those things is we have pushed back our contract years to where now they start June 1st to May 31st. We had already done this once for the same exact reason. We did August 1st, July 30th, and we realized we needed even more time because folks were not getting it reconciled. And now the entire summer to try to reconcile contracts, make sure they get spent, and if they don't, re-encumber the money and not have to go to recapture.
And let me just add two other things besides those types of contracts. Interest earnings, we get interest earnings on the cash, and so they had budgeted 90,000 and we ended up with like 300,000 in the end. So that 200,000, we have to go back to council to even ask for, but that's a part of the formula. And salaries, if we don't spend our salary dollars, because you always have people coming and go, attrition, you're gonna always have salary savings. That's a part of it. You can transfer those monies, but it's not looked upon fairly. So we're always gonna have some recapture, even if we encumbered every contractual dollar to the penny.
Good point.
Doesn't this have something to do with a different administration though, the way it was done?
Same thing.
Same thing?
Yeah, this has been going on
Okay.
since I was here 30 years ago. So
And the council typically will approve the money coming back.
they will approve the money coming back because it's gonna be going toward, projects that are good for the community.
Yeah, we've never had a denial, let's put it that way.
So different than, let's say, if, the internal service, one of them, like IT wanted the money back, it's all the same dollars, all for the same city, but here the money's actually going out to providers and helping the community.
And this is just how the ordinance was written.
Right,
that
so
this is the process.
that's a good point that you brought up, is that, and we've discussed this a little bit, but we're gonna bring this to you before you in May, when it's more finalized. And one of the things we'd like to do is to make our ordinance to where this money are, at least the contractual part, not so much like the part that's our salaries and stuff, but the part that goes to the nonprofits, if it doesn't get spent, it gets rollover. That's how every other children's services council in the state would work. And that way it allows you to have some sort of reserve if you want to put out an RFP later and things like that. Just makes it so you're not so much of a time crunch and like spending as quick as you can, not to lose it. Well, it allows you to have a little more time and a little more strategy, basically.
Yeah.
You know. But let me just to wrap up the action items. So for what we're planning, the places we're planning to put it, one of those RFPs I mentioned, we put out either 3 or 4 last summer. 4? 3. And one of those, there was 8 contracts that we could not fund because we basically just didn't have any more money, but they all scored 80% or higher. They scored very high. So we had always kind of told those folks, if we're able to get more funding at a later date, we will try to keep going down the list and fund you. So that's what the majority, about $1 million, will go towards funding those 8 new contracts that we're not able to get funding, even though they applied, they scored well, all those things, we just didn't have any money left. I'm sorry, I'm looking behind you on the screen because it's up there, that's why I'm like straight
No,
staring
I thought
at
you were looking right at me.
Sorry. I was just looking at the money and I was like, really sad. And then we were contacted by the mayor's office and we're gonna work with them as well as Councilwoman Clark Murray. They're interested in putting an after-school site, and I really don't know a lot of the details. We're meeting next week, but we did set aside some money for some sort of site in Eureka Gardens. It's actually called Valencia Way now. And then the remaining amount, we're gonna put it into the early learning category, and it will go to support some of our literacy efforts. And the reason I just wrote the remaining amount is because, as Shari mentioned, it might fluctuate a little bit, so.
Because it has to go through the city council process, that's a 2-month minimum process. We didn't want to have to wait till May when we have the final numbers. And then start that process, because then these providers really don't have time to do anything for the year.
Yeah, even if we put this in on Wednesday, which is the next deadline, which probably we won't make because we don't have the final number.
Right.
It wouldn't even be passed till June 5th. So that's, how long it takes. So based on the fact that it'll probably take 2 more weeks, it'll be like mid-June.
Okay, thank you. That was helpful.
Can I say something? The other thing that I don't think KHA has control over, and this is coming from a program perspective, is one example is this summer, dollars could be possibly left on the table because some of the schools are under construction. So when that happens, that impacts dollars. The other thing, future-wise, to keep in mind is some of the schools are going to be consolidated or closed. So how does that look? So I think that's an important explanation that KJ needs to explain when they talk to you. There's some things you don't have in control.
Yeah.
You understand? So I just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
Okay, I need a motion on this item. We have a second.
Second.
Okay, sorry, any more discussion on this? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Okay, the next, item on the agenda is governance activities. Sarah, Lynn, and I met, to go over all these policies, last week. So, it's part of our role as the governance committee to review these policies here. Sarah,
Sure. So we have 4 policies that are considered governance policies. Last board meeting, we took up 2 policies that were considered financial policies. And of course, the KHA, we have more internal procedures and things that our staff abide by, but these are things that the board actually voted on. And so we decided that it would be prudent for you all to each year review them and look at them and make sure we want to make any changes or keep them as is. So these 4 policies, based on our assessment, we decided to keep as is, and we also consulted with OGC. I don't know if I told everybody, but Lasikia, who was our longtime OGC person, left the city, so we're sad about that. But anyway, we're gonna have Reese He's here in spirit, I guess. But we did discuss it with CEO before she left, so. However, if you all want, we can make the changes to these policies today, so. So I'm gonna go over them one by one, perhaps, and discuss them one by one.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so the first one is called the CEO Contract Delegation Authority Policy. And essentially, this was created to help with efficiencies of KHA operations. And so we took some of the things that were sort of a lighter lift, if you will, and made it to where the CEO could execute them before the board meeting, but still had to let the board know. And also, as I mentioned to Meredith before, even though you give that authority to us, we can't do anything in a vacuum. It still goes through every single process. It still goes through procurement, finance department, the mayor's office, all of those things. But what we were finding was that sometimes some of these smaller things, when we had to wait 2 months, it was taking time. The main one that really was hanging us up sometimes was if we were trying to add some seats to after-school programs. Like if we saw that there was a waiting list and it wasn't very long and we wanted to just add 10 seats, we were able to do that in between board meetings, but then let you know. That's really where we primarily use this. And then some of the things actually are kind of, we already have authority to do, but we've spelled it out in here. So one of those is like, if you approve an action item, we can execute a contract. It's actually in the action item as well, but it's laid out in this. We can renew contracts as long as they're in good standing, but we do bring them before you and let you know the ones that we're renewing. We can increase contracts, like I mentioned, like the seats as an example, but no more than 10%. And that's actually in the action items too. When you vote on it, we put that at the top. And then the final one, which we have only ever used once, but we put it in there because it did at the time pose a problem, was that if for some reason there's like a state of emergency, then we can continue operations even if the board could not meet. And that did happen during COVID because of the whole, they weren't at first letting us meet virtually and we didn't know what to do and the board couldn't meet for like 4 months. And so we obviously had to like renew contracts and all that stuff. So OGC had advised us to put this in there, but it really would be, I mean, it'd have to be a, a pandemic, hopefully that doesn't happen again, or something to that nature for us to utilize it.
There's no changes to this?
No changes, yeah, this has already been existing, yeah.
Okay, so do we need to vote on that to keep this policy?
We don't really have to technically vote on it unless you want to make changes to it. If you just all agree that you're okay with keeping it, unless you want to have discussion.
Let's just have discussion on if there's any changes or amendments you'd like to make. Oh, gosh.
What the staff recommend?
Yes, it has been working. I don't know, Ken, do you want to add anything? It's been in existence since 21, yeah.
Gives us flexibility we need.
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes sense. I don't want to slow down the process for you guys, and it seems like there's a lot of checks and balances already happening, so.
Okay, the next, I'm sorry. The next policy is delegation of the authority from the CEO to the CAO. So there is some things that only I have the authority to do, like sign off the contracts and things of that nature. It's just basically saying, if for some reason I have to be out for an extended period of time, Kenneth can basically assume the role as the CEO, as the interim. And this was helpful and sometimes because.
Can't be out for 2
He's like, "Ben, you better not never do that." But you never know. So it is good to have this in place in that way. It provides the city too with a policy to have that authority that he could do anything that's needed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, next one.
Okay, so the next one is it's called small provider criteria. We actually in practice now call these guys emerging provider because they have expressed to us they don't like being called small. But in our ordinance, it is, yeah, exactly. In our ordinance, they are labeled as small. So that's why the policy is still set small. So in our ordinance, it actually, this first page is just our ordinance. It's telling you what we have to do. And basically the board has to create criteria for what they consider to be a small provider, and it has to be based on how much money they have in revenue, how many staff they have, and how many kids they serve. it's kind of a weird set of things to judge it on, but we have to do it because of our ordinance. Now, we have what we call it, as I mentioned, it's called Emerging Provider Academy. So right now we have 8 providers, really 16 in total. We have 8 from like PSG technically, like that serve adults, and then 8 that serve kids, and they're going through our academy together. The PSG ones their money is actually paid by PSG and everything, but we work on it together so that we wouldn't be doing the same exact thing separately. But they get like a mentor, they get training every month, and it's really been successful. We did the past cohort had 13, and 12 out of the 13 now have like big providers because they got actual contracts. So that's the whole point, is to try to help grassroots providers to grow. So the criteria, which has worked so far, was that they have to have it be a nonprofit in existence for at least a year. Their budget cannot be over $250,000. They have to have at least 1 full or part-time employee and no more than 15, and serve a minimum of 10 kids and a maximum of 500. And we did put a caveat in here that said, unless it's like an event-based program where it's just a one day and they're serving a lot of kids. This, and I will mention, this actually did have, I think like a year ago, we did take one thing out, and so the rest has been working well. The last one had said that if they got funding from KHA before, they couldn't get funding, and that was sort of like tripping us up because we had a lot of these small ones that many years ago, they had gotten like a $5,000 mini grant or something, and it was knocking them out. So we took that out. It just didn't make sense. So these 4 that we're left with have worked so far. Do you want to add anything, Kenneth?
Just a overall comment. I've been with the agency since '08. I remember there was a time where the word out on the street was we only funded the same providers, and that was sort of the knock against us. And I'll say with the small emerging providers and just these last really 2 RFPs, we got a lot of new emerging providers, and so it's good because we know our big providers start off small, and we're just hoping that this is going to help build their capacity so they can continue to get bigger dollars and apply for grants as well outside of the city. So it's good.
Yeah, and I'll just add too that on behalf of the staff that, you know, and I'm sure you all know this, that these 8 providers take up way more time than like 40 providers that we've had for a long time. So it is really, really important, but the staff who work on it, they put a lot of time and effort into really helping these guys to improve.
You know, we had one not too long ago, but didn't come.
We did. We had, Desiree.
Yeah.
Yes, Desiree Jones. She was in our last cohort. Yeah. And then she now has kind of graduated to be a big provider, if you will.
Yeah, she's good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it helps address the disparities that exist.
Yeah.
When you're comparing apples to oranges. So you
Exactly.
have 19 grant writers on your staff, and sometimes
Yes.
there's the CEO and the grant writer, so.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's great. Ready for the next one?
Grant applications?
Yeah.
Why am there we go. Got it. Okay, the last one is about the approval of grant applications, and I was telling Meredith that this policy was very dearly shepherded by Dr. Darby. If you all know Dr. Darby, who used to be on our board. This was really like her baby in getting this done, and we spent a lot of time and effort to try to get this right, and it has been working. And some of the changes too came out of an audit that we had. We had like a 2.5-year audit on all the grants that we had about 2.5 years ago. And so some of this came out of that too. But basically what it is saying is that we can apply for a grant before the board meeting, but that we have to let you know, and that if you don't want to do it, we will withdraw our application. The other part, and it was in your packet, but it's not at the end of this, but the grant matrix that you saw in there, that we have to use that grant matrix, and that has to be presented to the CEO to see if we're going to apply for something. And one of the main factors we look at is, are any of our partners applying? Because we don't want to compete with a nonprofit that if they're trying to get it, like we're going to help support them get it. we don't want to get it instead. So that's one of the main things. And then does it fit our mission? Do we have the partners, available to do it? All those different, so each time we fill those out. And we actually also fill those out, although you don't see it, for grants that we even just consider. So if we find a grant that we think, and Roger's over that, I don't know if you want to say anything more about that, but even if you come up with one that you think you might want to do, we fill out the.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our assumption is that you will probably want to go with it, but we're very flexible and we can pull that in any times.
Yeah. And so that way we have a track too of things that we really considered, even if we decided not to do it. So that's basically what this policy says, is that we're able to use the matrix, apply for things, and then let you know that we will withdraw if you don't want to do it for whatever reason.
I have one question about that because I look at that matrix, and there's some sections where sometimes we'll check either unknown, I'm not sure whether it says unknown or unsure, and then no, like, is there anywhere where there's an explanation? Like the unknown or the unsure, like I think one of them said something like, is there an opportunity for us to apply later?
Again, yeah.
Can we say unsure? Like, are there any efforts that are taken to like answer that, or is it just like unsure, here it is?
We could certainly add a narrative for elaboration on that. I think that's simple enough, and you're right.
Like where it says no.
We really just do it verbally,
Yeah.
like if we talk through it,
Mhm.
but we don't typically write it in, so.
Yeah, if we're sharing it, I think in terms of kind of, if it's an accountability document, like, I mean, I look at it, I notice it, but,
Yeah.
if the answer is no, I mean, granted, okay, is there any other provider that offers this service? Okay, no, there's no explanation required for that, but if it's unsure, I'm looking for like, okay, what's the answer for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yeah, and they're on any of them, really.
Right,
Like, even if it's a yes, like, you need to tell us.
Yeah, we'll just add a section at the very bottom that we kind of just explain everything a little bit more. That's good, I like that idea.
Do you vote on that, or is that just something that you guys can implement?
We can implement
Okay.
it, yeah. But before we'll mention that at the board meeting, that we're gonna add that to it.
Okay. Great. Okay, that was well done, everybody, thank you. Is there any public comment? Thank you all for being here. Nobody wants to say anything? Anything? Do we need to set the next
Summer's
step?
coming.
What do you say?
Summer's coming.
Camps are coming.
Yeah.
So we're ramping up, excited, so it's ready, can't believe it's 4 years
I
old,
know.
can't believe it's Easter coming.
I know. Okay, well, thank you for being here. Do we need to set a next governance meeting, or is it all, we have all that done?
It's done through
Do you know what
July.
it is, Deborah?
We have our schedule.
Do you know what day it is?
I don't, but everyone's already
It's, yeah,
accepted it,
calendar,
yeah, and so
yeah.
calendar.
Okay, well, meeting adjourned.
All right.
Great job, thank you.
Apologize for being late.
I can't wait to
They did not have, they didn't have like, 2 minutes.
I started literally